Sarah walked through the automatic doors of Boston Children's Hospital, her guitar case slung over her shoulder and a bright smile on her face despite the early morning hour. The spring sun was just beginning to warm the city streets, casting long shadows through the hospital windows as she made her way to the volunteer check-in desk. Her brown hair was tied back in a messy bun, and her well-worn jeans and comfortable sweater spoke of someone who valued practicality over pretense. "Good morning, Marie," she called out to the elderly volunteer coordinator, who looked up from her computer with a warm smile. "Any special requests from our friends today?" "Actually, yes," Marie replied, shuffling through some papers. "We have a new patient in room 412, 8-year-old Emily Matthews. She's been here for about a week, and her father mentioned she used to take piano lessons before." Marie's voice trailed off, her eyes showing a hint of sadness. Well, she could really use some music in her life right now. The gentle sound of piano music floated through the hallway as Sarah walked down the corridor, her footsteps matching the rhythm of the melody. She nodded, understanding the unspoken weight in Marie's words. As she made her way to the elevator, her mind wandered to the hundreds of children she'd played for over the past 2 years. Each one had their own story, their own battles, but music had a way of bringing light to even the darkest rooms. The 4th floor was quieter than usual, with only the occasional squeak of nurses' shoes on the polished floor. As Sarah approached room 412, she heard a child's laughter, not the boisterous kind she was used to hearing in playgrounds, but something more subdued, yet genuine. Standing in the doorway, she saw a small figure propped up in bed, her pale face brightening at something her father had just said. The man sat in a chair beside the bed, his suit jacket draped over the back, tie loosened, and sleeves rolled up. Despite his clearly expensive attire, there was something approachable about him. Perhaps it was the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled at his daughter, or how his large hand gently held her much smaller one. "Knock knock," Sarah said softly, drawing their attention. "I heard there's a musician in here who might like some company." Emily's eyes widened at the sight of the guitar case, while her father straightened in his chair, running a hand through his slightly disheveled dark hair. "You must be from the music therapy program," he said, standing to greet her. "I'm James Matthews, and this is Emily." "I'm Sarah," she replied, struck by the warmth in his hazel eyes despite the obvious exhaustion etched on his face. "And yes, I volunteer here a few times a week. Would it be okay if I played something for Emily?" The little girl nodded eagerly, her 4 tubes shifting slightly with the movement. Sarah noticed the stuffed elephant clutched in her arm, its fabric worn from years of love. She pulled up a chair and began unpacking her guitar, her movements deliberate and gentle. "So, Emily, I heard you play piano," Sarah said conversationally as she tuned her instrument. "What's your favorite song to play?" "I used to love Twinkle, Twinkle Little Star," Emily replied, her voice smaller than her 8 years would suggest. "But I can't, not anymore." Her eyes flickered to her hands, and Sarah noticed the slight tremor in them. James's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and Sarah could feel the weight of unspoken pain in the room. Without missing a beat, she smiled and positioned her guitar. "Well, how about I play it for you, and you can be my conductor? Sometimes conducting is even more fun than playing." The familiar melody of Twinkle, Twinkle Little Star filled the room as Sarah began to play, the notes taking on a new life through the guitar strings. Emily's face lit up, and James watched in amazement as his daughter's free hand began to move slightly, conducting in time with the music. The morning sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow over the scene as Sarah's voice joined the guitar, soft and clear. As she played, Sarah couldn't help but notice how James's shoulders gradually relaxed, the worry lines around his eyes softening. There was something about him, not just his obvious devotion to his daughter, but a depth of character that showed through even in silence. When their eyes met briefly over Emily's head, Sarah felt an unexpected flutter in her chest, which she quickly attributed to the emotion of the moment. The next few songs flowed naturally, each one bringing more color to Emily's cheeks and more ease to James's posture. Sarah mixed children's favorites with gentle pop songs, her voice weaving through the melodies like a warm embrace. The stuffed elephant, which Sarah learned was named Mr. Trunks, bobbed along in Emily's lap as she conducted with growing confidence. "You're a natural conductor," Sarah praised, watching Emily's face glow with pride. "Mr. Trunks seems to think so too." Emily giggled, hugging her elephant closer. "Daddy got him for me when I was really little. He goes to all my doctor appointments." James leaned forward, his tie now completely loose around his neck. "Mr. Trunks has been to more medical consultations than most doctors," he said, his voice carrying a hint of both humor and weariness. "He's practically earned his medical degree." A nurse appeared in the doorway, her scrubs decorated with colorful butterflies. "Time for morning meds, Emily," she announced cheerfully, though Sarah noticed how Emily's small frame tensed at the words. "Hey, how about I teach you a special song while the nurse does her job?" Sarah offered quickly. "It's one I wrote myself about a brave elephant who went on adventures." Emily's grip on Mr. Trunks loosened slightly, and she nodded. As the nurse efficiently went about her work, Sarah began a playful tune about an elephant who wasn't afraid of thunderstorms because he could make music with his trunk. The story was silly, but it did its job. Emily's attention stayed on the song rather than the medical procedures happening around her. James watched the scene unfold, something shifting in his expression. The hardened exterior of a successful businessman seemed to soften further, revealing more of the devoted father beneath. His phone buzzed repeatedly in his pocket, but for once, he didn't reach for it. When the nurse finished, Sarah noticed the time. "I should probably go check on some other rooms," she said, beginning to pack up her guitar. "But I'm here every Monday and Thursday morning if you'd like another concert. Please come back." Emily said quickly, then looked at her father. "Can she, Daddy?" James stood, smoothing his rumpled shirt with one hand. "We'd like that very much," he said, his voice carrying a warmth that seemed to fill the entire room. "Thank you for today. I haven't seen her this engaged since." He paused, swallowing hard. "Well, in quite a while." Sarah slung her guitar case over her shoulder, trying to ignore how her heart skipped when James smiled at her. "Music has a way of reaching places nothing else can," she said softly. "Emily is a special girl. You're lucky to have each other." As she turned to leave, Emily called out, "Will you write more songs about Mr. Trunks?" "Just for you," Sarah promised, her hand on the doorframe. "Maybe next time he can go on a space adventure. What do you think?" Emily's excited chatter about astronaut elephants followed Sarah into the hallway, accompanied by James's rich laughter. The sound made her smile all the way to her next patient's room, though she tried not to dwell on why. The morning light had strengthened, filling the hospital corridors with a golden glow. Sarah could smell coffee from the nurse's station and hear the distant chime of the elevator. Everything felt somehow brighter, more vivid, as if Emily's room had awakened something that had been sleeping in her heart. In the following days, Sarah found herself thinking about the Matthews family more often than she cared to admit. She jotted down lyrics about elephant astronauts during her lunch breaks at the coffee shop where she worked, and caught herself wondering how Emily was doing, whether James had gotten any rest, if Mr. Trunks was still attending medical consultations. Thursday morning arrived with a gentle spring rain tapping against the hospital windows. Sarah shook water droplets from her umbrella as she entered the building, the familiar antiseptic smell mixing with the earthy scent of rain that followed her inside. Her guitar case was decorated with a new sticker, a cartoon elephant in a spacesuit that she'd found at a local music store. The pediatric floor was busier than usual, with doctors making their morning rounds. Sarah's footsteps quickened as she approached room 412, eager to share her new astronaut elephant song. But the room was empty, the bed neatly made and waiting for its next occupant. Her heart sank as she hurried to the nurse's station. "Emily Matthews?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Has she been discharged?" The nurse looked up from her computer, concern crossing her face. "Oh honey, no. She had a rough night. They moved her to the ICU around 3 a.m. Her father's been there all night." Sarah's fingers tightened around her guitar strap. The ICU meant things had gotten worse, not better. The elevator ride to the intensive care unit felt endless, her mind racing with thoughts of Emily's bright smile and trembling hands. The ICU was eerily quiet except for the steady beeping of monitors. Through the glass walls, Sarah saw James before she saw Emily. He sat slumped in a chair, still wearing yesterday's suit, his face buried in his hands. The sight made her chest ache. A gentle tap on the glass caught his attention. When he looked up, the raw emotion in his eyes nearly took Sarah's breath away. He stepped into the hallway, closing the door softly behind him. "Sarah," he said, his voice rough from lack of sleep. "I didn't expect, it's not a good time for music." "I know," she said softly. "I just wanted to check on her. On both of you." James ran a hand through his disheveled hair, and Sarah noticed it was shaking slightly. "The doctors say it's a setback. Her body is fighting the new treatment protocol. I should have noticed something was wrong sooner, I should have." Without thinking, Sarah reached out and touched his arm. "Hey, you're doing everything you can. Emily is the strongest 8-year-old I know, and she has the best dad fighting in her corner." The touch seemed to break something in him. His shoulders sagged, and suddenly Sarah found herself holding him as he cried silently in the sterile hospital hallway. She could feel his heart racing against her shoulder, smell the faded scent of expensive cologne mixed with coffee and hospital soap. "I'm sorry," he said after a moment, stepping back and wiping his eyes. "I haven't slept much. The board meeting I missed this morning, none of it matters when she's like this. I'd give everything, my whole company, just to see her healthy again." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Company?" James gave a tired half-smile. "Matthews Technology Solutions. I'm the CEO, though right now I'm not doing a very good job at either being a CEO or a father." The revelation that he was one of Boston's most successful tech entrepreneurs barely registered compared to the pain in his voice. "Being a father is your most important job," Sarah said firmly. "And from what I've seen, you're incredible at it." Through the glass, they could see Emily stirring slightly. James touched Sarah's hand briefly, the gesture full of unspoken gratitude. Would you mind sitting with her for a few minutes? I need to make some calls, let her doctors know she's waking up." "Of course," Sarah said, already moving toward the door. As she settled into the chair beside Emily's bed, she began humming softly, not her planned astronaut song, but a gentle lullaby her own mother used to sing. Emily's eyes fluttered open, finding Sarah through a haze of medication. "You came," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the beeping machines. "I promised, didn't I?" Sarah smiled, noting how Mr. Trunks was still clutched tightly in Emily's arm despite all the tubes and wires. "And look what I found from my guitar case." She held up the astronaut elephant sticker, watching as a tiny smile crossed Emily's pale face. From the hallway, James watched them through the glass, his phone forgotten in his hand. The sight of Sarah's gentle presence beside his daughter's bed stirred something deep in his chest, something he hadn't felt since losing his wife to the same genetic condition that now threatened their daughter. Over the next few days, Sarah found herself spending her lunch breaks in the ICU. She'd bring her guitar, but often she'd just sit and talk with Emily, sharing stories about the funny characters she met at the coffee shop or listening to Emily's memories of piano recitals and school plays. James was always there, alternating between conference calls in the hallway and tender moments at his daughter's bedside. One afternoon, as Sarah unwrapped her sandwich in the ICU waiting room, she overheard two nurses talking. "That's James Matthews in there," one whispered. "His company just donated a whole new wing to the Children's Research Department. My sister works in PR and says he's been selling off his personal assets too." Sarah's sandwich sat forgotten as she watched James through the glass, remembering his words about giving everything for Emily's health. He wasn't just saying it, he was actually doing it. Emily's condition gradually stabilized enough for her to return to her regular room. The spring rain had given way to early summer warmth, and Sarah often found the window open, letting in the sound of birds and the scent of blooming hospital garden flowers. "Tell me about Mom," Emily said one morning, while Sarah was teaching her simple guitar chords that her healing hands could manage. The question made Sarah pause, but it wasn't directed at her. James looked up from his laptop, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. The pain that flashed across his face was quickly replaced by a gentle smile. "She would have loved these music sessions," he said softly. "Remember how she used to dance with you in the kitchen?" Emily nodded, carefully strumming the guitar strings. "To old records." She said digital music didn't have enough soul. "Claire was a free spirit," James continued, his eyes distant with memory. "She filled our house with art and music and laughter. Even when she got sick, she never stopped dancing." His voice caught slightly. "You have her smile, you know. And her strength." Sarah felt like an intruder in this intimate moment, but as she started to stand, Emily grabbed her hand. "Stay," she pleaded. "Daddy never talks about Mom anymore. Maybe you could write a song about her." The request hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Sarah looked at James, seeking permission. He nodded almost imperceptibly, emotion clear in his eyes. "I'd be honored," Sarah said softly. "But I'll need help." What was her favorite flower? "Sunflowers," Emily said immediately. "She planted them all along our driveway. She said they were proof that beautiful things will always turn toward the light," James added quietly, closing his laptop. For the next hour, Sarah sat with them, taking notes as they shared memories of Claire, her love of mismatched socks, how she burned every cake she tried to bake but made amazing hot chocolate, the way she hummed while reading bedtime stories. With each memory, the tension in James's shoulders eased a little more, and Emily's eyes grew brighter. A young doctor appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand. "Mr. Matthews? The latest test results are in." Sarah began packing up her guitar, but Emily held on to her hand. "You'll come back with the song tomorrow?" "First thing in the morning," Sarah promised. As she stood to leave, her eyes met James's. The gratitude in his gaze made her heart flutter, and she hurried into the hallway before he could see her blush. That evening, Sarah sat in her small apartment, surrounded by crumpled papers as she worked on Claire's song. Her coffee had gone cold, but she barely noticed. She wanted to get this right, not for herself, but for a little girl who missed her mother and a man who'd buried his grief in order to stay strong for his daughter. Her phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for today. Emily's finally sleeping peacefully. James." Sarah stared at the message, warmth spreading through her chest. She hadn't given him her number, which meant he must have gone to some effort to get it. She typed and deleted several responses before settling on a simple "It was my privilege. See you both tomorrow." Setting her phone aside, she picked up her guitar again, the melody finally coming together in her mind. Outside her window, a few early fireflies danced in the growing dusk, reminding her of Claire's belief about beautiful things turning toward the light. Morning sunlight streamed through the hospital windows as Sarah hurried down the corridor, her guitar case bouncing against her back. She'd been up most of the night finishing Claire's song, fueled by coffee and determination. The morning air felt electric with anticipation as she approached Emily's room. She found Emily sitting up in bed, looking stronger than she had in days. Mr. Trunk sat in her lap wearing a tiny hospital gown that one of the nurses had fashioned from gauze. James was there too, dressed in a fresh suit but his tie hanging loose around his neck, a habit Sarah had come to recognize as his way of balancing his two worlds. "You came." Emily's face lit up. "Did you finish the song?" Sarah nodded, pulling up her usual chair. Her heart was racing as she took out her guitar. She'd written dozens of songs before, but none had felt this important. "It's called Sunflower Dance," she said softly, watching James's expression change at the title. The first gentle notes filled the room as Sarah began to play. Her voice was clear and sweet as she sang about a mother who planted beauty wherever she went, who danced in kitchens and loved mismatched socks, who lives on in summer sunflowers and winter hot chocolate, in shared smiles and inherited strength. Emily's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. James had moved to sit on the edge of her bed, holding her hand tightly. When Sarah reached the chorus about how love leaves an eternal dance in our hearts, she saw him wipe his eyes quickly with his free hand. As the last note faded, silence filled the room, not the heavy silence of grief, but the peaceful quiet of healing. Emily was the first to speak, her voice wobbling slightly. "It's perfect. It's just like her." James cleared his throat, but his voice was still rough with emotion. "Claire would have." He paused, collecting himself. "Thank you, Sarah. There aren't words." A knock at the door broke the moment. Dr. Morrison, Emily's primary physician, entered with a wide smile. "Good morning. I see we're having a concert." She moved to check Emily's vitals as she spoke. "The latest round of treatment seems to be working much better. Your numbers are looking very encouraging." Sarah started to excuse herself for the medical discussion, but Emily grabbed her hand. "Stay. Please? Your good luck." The doctor's news was cautiously optimistic. The new treatment protocol was showing promising results, and Emily's strength was improving. As Dr. Morrison spoke, Sarah felt James's hand brush against hers where they both held Emily's bedside rail. The touch was brief but sent warmth spreading up her arm. "Well, this calls for a celebration," Sarah said once the doctor left. "How about an elephant astronaut concert?" For the next hour, she played every silly song she'd written about Mr. Trunk's adventures, including the new one about his space mission to the moon. Emily's laughter filled the room, and even James joined in for the chorus about zero-gravity peanuts. During a break between songs, Emily asked, "Daddy, can Sarah come to dinner when I get home? She's never seen our sunflower driveway." James met Sarah's eyes over Emily's head. "We'd love that," he said softly. "If you'd like to, of course." Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "I'd like that very much." Later, as she was packing up to leave, James followed her into the hallway. "Sarah, wait." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she now knew meant he was nervous. "I know this might be inappropriate, given that you're a volunteer here, but would you have coffee with me sometime? Not at the hospital?" The question hung between them, full of possibility. Sarah thought about all the hospital policies about volunteers maintaining professional boundaries, about the complications of his position and hers. Then she thought about the way he looked at his daughter, how he cried in her arms in the ICU, how his eyes crinkled when he really smiled. "Yes," she said simply. "I'd like that." His relief was visible, his smile brightening his tired face. "Tomorrow morning? I know a place near the hospital." "I know all the places near the hospital," Sarah laughed. "I work at Joe's Coffee Bar between my volunteer shifts." "The one with the blue awning?" "That's where I get my morning coffee." "How have we never?" "You're the triple shot espresso at 7:15, Sarah realized with a start. "I've made your coffee dozens of times." They both laughed at the coincidence, the sound drawing a smile from a passing nurse. As Sarah turned to leave, James called after her, "I'll see you at 7:15? "Make it 7:30, she replied over her shoulder. "I'll be on the other side of the counter this time." The next morning dawned clear and bright, the kind of early summer day that made Boston feel magical. Sarah arrived at Joe's Coffee Bar earlier than usual, her heart doing strange flips in her chest. She'd changed her outfit 3 times before settling on a simple sundress that she hoped struck the right balance between casual and special. The morning rush was just beginning as she tied her apron on, the smell of fresh coffee and warm pastries filling the air. Her coworker, Mike, raised an eyebrow at her unusually styled hair. "Hot date?" "No," Sarah said too quickly, then amended, "maybe." "It's complicated." The bell above the door chimed at exactly 7:30. James walked in wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Sarah's monthly rent, but his familiar loose tie and slightly rumpled hair made him seem more human than CEO. Their eyes met across the counter, and Sarah felt that now familiar flutter in her chest. "Triple shot espresso?" she asked with a smile. "Actually," he said, returning her smile, "I was hoping to have coffee with someone special today." Mike nearly dropped the mug he was holding. Sarah untied her apron, trying to ignore her coworker's shocked expression. "My shift just ended." They chose a quiet corner table by the window, sunlight dancing across their coffee cups. For a moment, they sat in awkward silence, both acutely aware that this was different from their hospital room conversations. "Emily had a good night," James said finally. "She's been working on a list of songs she wants to learn when she can play piano again." Sarah wrapped her hands around her coffee mug, absorbing its warmth. "She's so determined. She reminds me of someone else I know." James looked down at his own cup, a shadow crossing his face. "I haven't always been this focused. After Claire got sick, I buried myself in work. Built the company into what it is today, but I missed so much time with Emily. When she was diagnosed with the same condition." He trailed off, his knuckles white around his cup. "But you're here now," Sarah said softly. "That's what matters. Because of you, in many ways." His eyes met hers, intense and sincere. "You brought music back into our lives. I hadn't realized how much we'd lost that part of Claire until you started playing in Emily's room." Sarah felt her cheeks warm. "I just showed up with a guitar. You and Emily did the rest. You did so much more than that." James reached across the table, hesitating for a moment before taking her hand. His touch was warm and sure. "You treated Emily like a child, not a patient. You helped me remember how to talk about Claire. You stayed in that ICU when you didn't have to." The morning sunlight caught his wedding ring, and Sarah felt a pang of uncertainty. James followed her gaze and slowly withdrew his hand. "I should explain about that," he said quietly. "I keep wearing it because Emily gets scared when I don't. She thinks I'll forget Claire like I forgot the music." "You don't have to explain," Sarah started, but he shook his head. "I do. Because I'm sitting here with you, feeling things I haven't felt in years, and you deserve to know where I stand." He took a deep breath. "I'll always love Claire. She gave me Emily, she made me who I am. But I'm learning that maybe there's room in a heart for more than one love story." Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. "James." The coffee shop's bell chimed again as new customers entered. The sound broke the moment, reminding them both of the world beyond their corner table. James glanced at his watch and sighed. "I have a board meeting in 30 minutes. But Sarah." He met her eyes again. "Would you have dinner with me? A proper date, outside the hospital and away from coffee shops?" Sarah thought about hospital volunteer policies, about complicated pasts and uncertain futures. Then she thought about Emily's determination, about Claire's belief in turning toward the light, about the way her heart felt fuller every time she was with the Matthews family. "Yes," she said. "But only if you were a properly tied tie for once." His laugh drew smiles from nearby customers. "Deal. Though you should know, Emily's the one who usually ties them for me." As they stood to leave, James hesitated, then quickly kissed her cheek. "Thank you," he whispered, "for bringing the music back." Sarah stood in the doorway of Joe's coffee bar long after he'd gone, touching her cheek where she could still feel his kiss, watching the morning sunlight paint the city in shades of gold and possibility. Sarah spent the rest of her morning shift at the hospital in a daze, her mind replaying every moment of the coffee shop conversation. Even her regular patients noticed her distraction, especially when she accidentally played Twinkle, Twinkle Little Star twice in a row for young Tommy in the cancer ward. By the time she reached Emily's room, the morning sun had climbed high in the sky, filling the space with warm light. She found Emily sitting up in bed, working on what appeared to be a serious art project involving Mr. Trunks and a lot of glitter. "Sarah." Emily beamed, quickly trying to hide her crafting materials under her blanket. "You're late today." "Sorry about that. I had a..." Sarah paused, unsure how to describe her coffee with James to his daughter. "A busy morning." Emily's eyes sparkled knowingly. "Did you have coffee with Daddy? He was smiling really big when he came back to see me before his meeting." Sarah felt her cheeks warm as she set down her guitar case. "You're too observant for your own good, you know that?" "Mom always said I got that from her," Emily said, pulling her craft materials back out. She could always tell what people were feeling. Daddy's not as good at it. That's why he needs us. The simple way she included Sarah in that us made Sarah's heart squeeze. What are you working on there? She asked, hoping to change the subject. It's a surprise. For when I go home next week. Emily's eyes widened as she realized what she'd said. Oops. That was supposed to be a surprise too. Daddy said we should wait to tell you until the doctors were completely sure. Sarah's breath caught. You're going home? Emily nodded enthusiastically, sending glitter cascading onto her blanket. Dr. Morrison said the new treatment is working really well. I still have to come back a lot, but I can sleep in my own bed and see my sunflowers. The door opened and James walked in, his tie now properly knotted and a takeout bag in his hand. I brought lunch for. He stopped when he saw Sarah, his face softening into a smile. I should have gotten more sandwiches. No problem, Sarah said quickly. I should check on my other patients anyway. Stay, both Matthews said simultaneously, then laughed at their synchronization. Daddy always gets extra food anyway, Emily said, patting the bed beside her. He says it's because he forgets he's not eating for two anymore, but I think he just likes to share. James pulled up a chair, unpacking what looked like enough sandwiches for 5 people. Guilty as charged. Though today I might have been hoping to run into someone special. Sarah felt warmth spread through her chest as she settled onto the edge of Emily's bed, careful to avoid the art supplies. James passed her a sandwich that she recognized from her favorite deli near the hospital. How did you know? She asked, unwrapping it to find her usual order. I might have asked Mike at the coffee shop, James admitted, looking slightly embarrassed. He was very protective of you at first, but apparently I passed some sort of test. Emily giggled, reaching for her own sandwich. Did he give you the scary dad look? Daddy uses that on my friend Tommy's dad all the time. Different kind of look, James murmured, his eyes meeting Sarah's with a warmth that made her forget about her sandwich entirely. The afternoon sun painted the hospital room in soft colors as they shared their impromptu picnic. Emily told stories about her adventures with Mr. Trunks, complete with sound effects that made James choke on his drink more than once. Sarah found herself studying the way James's whole body seemed to relax when he laughed, how his eyes crinkled at the corners, how his hand kept finding excuses to brush against hers as they passed napkins and water bottles. Tell Sarah about the house, Daddy, Emily said suddenly, bouncing slightly in her excitement. About her room. James shot his daughter a look that was half amusement, half exasperation. Emily. What about my room? Sarah asked, looking between them. Emily beamed, despite her father's gentle head shake. The music room. Daddy's been having it cleaned up. He said maybe you could use it to give me piano lessons when I'm stronger. It still has Mom's old record player and everything. The tips of James's ears had turned red. I was going to mention it, eventually. When the timing was right. There's no pressure, of course. I just thought. He thought you might like a better place to practice than your apartment with the noisy upstairs neighbors, Emily finished proudly. I heard him on the phone with the cleaning company. Sarah looked at James, her heart doing somersaults in her chest. The fact that he'd been thinking about her, planning for her comfort, making space for her in their home, it overwhelmed her in the best possible way. I'd love to see it, she said softly, watching relief and joy spread across his face. The room, the sunflowers, all of it. When I get home? Emily asked hopefully, her sandwich forgotten in her excitement. James reached out and took Sarah's hand properly this time, no pretense of passing napkins. When you get home, he agreed, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her skin. We'll give Sarah the full tour. The afternoon light caught the glitter scattered across Emily's blanket, sending tiny rainbows dancing across their joined hands, a beautiful mess of old memories and new beginnings, all sparkling with possibility. The next few days passed in a blur of preparations for Emily's homecoming. Sarah continued her regular volunteer rounds, but she found herself spending more and more time in room 412, helping Emily craft elaborate welcome home signs for herself while James handled an endless stream of phone calls about medical equipment deliveries and home care arrangements. "Do you think the sunflowers will still be there?" Emily asked one afternoon, carefully gluing sequins to her latest masterpiece. "I'm scared they might have died without Mom to take care of them." Sarah looked up from where she was organizing Emily's impressive collection of art supplies. "Your dad mentioned he hired a gardener to maintain them." "Really?" Emily's eyes widened. "He never told me that." "He didn't want you to worry," Sarah said softly, remembering how James had confessed during their second coffee date that he'd been having the sunflowers tended weekly since Claire's passing. "Some things are too important to let go." A comfortable silence fell as they worked, broken only by the gentle rustling of paper and the distant sounds of hospital life. Sarah found herself watching Emily's hands as she worked. They were steadier now, though still not quite ready for piano keys. "Sarah?" Emily's voice was unusually hesitant. "When I go home, you'll still come see us, right? Not just for music lessons?" Sarah set down the markers she was sorting and moved to sit on the edge of the bed. "Try and stop me," she said, giving Emily a gentle bump with her shoulder. "Besides, I have to know how Mr. Trunks likes his new space helmet." Emily hugged her suddenly, glitter and sequins cascading everywhere. "Good. Because Daddy smiles more when you're around. Real smiles, like he used to do with Mom." Sarah's heart caught in her throat as she hugged Emily back, careful of the 4 lines that were still a constant presence. "He has a lot to smile about," she managed. "Especially now that you're getting stronger." The door opened and James walked in, his suit jacket draped over one arm and his phone finally tucked away in his pocket. He stopped short at the sight of them covered in craft supplies, his face softening into one of those real smiles Emily had just mentioned. "Should I come back when the glitter explosion has settled?" he teased, brushing a sparkly spot on Sarah's cheek with his thumb. The touch sent warmth spreading across her skin. "You're just jealous you missed the crafting session," she retorted, trying to ignore how her pulse quickened when he let his hand linger. "Daddy, look!" Emily held up her sign proudly. "Sarah helped me make it perfect for the music room." James studied the glitter-encrusted masterpiece with exaggerated seriousness. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Though I think Sarah might be wearing more glitter than made it onto the paper." "It's a good look on her," Emily declared, giving Sarah a knowing grin that made her look startlingly like her father. Later, as Sarah was packing up to leave, James followed her into the hallway. "Have dinner with me tonight?" he asked quietly. "There's something I want to show you before Emily comes home." "The mysterious music room?" Sarah guessed, remembering Emily's excitement. James shook his head, a mix of nervousness and hope in his eyes. "Something else. Something that might help explain everything." The weight in his voice made Sarah's heart skip. "What time?" "I'll pick you up at 7. We're something comfortable for walking." Sarah nodded, her mind already racing with possibilities. As she turned to go, James caught her hand and pulled her back gently, pressing a soft kiss to her lips that tasted of coffee and promise. "Sorry," he murmured, though his smile suggested he wasn't sorry at all. "I've been wanting to do that all day." "Me too," Sarah admitted, her fingers touching her lips as she walked away, leaving a trail of glitter in her wake. The hospital corridor seemed to glow in the late afternoon sun, or maybe it was just her heart lighting up the world around her. She could hear Emily's delighted giggle floating from her room, followed by James's deeper laugh, and she knew with sudden certainty that whatever James wanted to show her tonight would change everything, hopefully for the better. Sarah stood in front of her apartment building at 7 sharp, wearing a simple cotton dress and comfortable sandals as requested. The evening air was warm and sweet with the scent of summer flowers from the nearby park. When James pulled up in a surprisingly modest sedan, she raised an eyebrow. "Not what you expected?" he asked as he opened the passenger door for her. "Honestly, I was picturing something more CEO-like." James smiled as he slid back into the driver's seat. This was Claire's car. She said fancy cars were just metal boxes with ego problems. His voice held that familiar mix of love and loss when he spoke of his late wife. She was usually right about things like that. They drove through the quieting streets of Boston, leaving the bustle of downtown behind. Sarah noticed they were heading toward the hospital district but taking a different route than usual. Finally, James pulled into a small parking lot beside a modern building she didn't recognize. The Matthews Research Center, she read from the elegant sign. "This is yours?" "Part of the company," James said quietly, taking her hand as they walked toward the entrance. "But this particular facility has a more personal purpose." He used his keycard to let them in, leading her through pristine hallways to an elevator. As they descended to the basement level, Sarah felt him tense slightly beside her. "James? What is this place?" The elevator doors opened to reveal a state-of-the-art laboratory. Through glass walls, Sarah could see researchers working despite the late hour, their faces lit by computer screens displaying complex molecular models. "This is where we're developing the treatment that's helping Emily," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "And where we tried to save Claire." Sarah squeezed his hand as understanding dawned. "The genetic condition. When Claire was diagnosed, I promised her I'd find a cure," James continued, leading her past the labs to a smaller room. "I was too late for her, but the research continued. When Emily started showing symptoms." He stopped, taking a shaky breath. The room he'd led them to was an office, but one wall was covered in photos. Sarah recognized Claire immediately, a beautiful woman with Emily's smile and bright eyes, captured in moments of joy with her family. Dancing in the kitchen, playing piano, planting sunflowers, holding a newborn Emily. "She documented everything," James said softly. "Said memories were more valuable than money. I thought she was being sentimental until after she was gone. Then these photos became my lifeline." He pointed to a particular photo of Claire in a hospital bed, still smiling despite obvious illness, a young Emily curled up beside her. "This was the day she made me promise two things, to find a cure, and to never stop playing music with Emily." Sarah touched the photo gently. "That's why the music room is so important." "I failed at both promises for a while," James admitted. "I buried myself in the research, thinking if I just worked harder, faster, but I left Emily alone with her grief. Then you walked into her hospital room with that guitar, and suddenly there was music again. Hope again." He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "I'm showing you this because I need you to understand. The company, the research, Emily's treatment, it's all connected to Claire. To keeping my promises to her. And somehow, you've become part of that too. More than part of it." Sarah felt tears in her eyes as she looked at the wall of photos, at the love story documented there, at the man beside her still trying to fulfill promises to a woman he'd lost while discovering his heart had room for new love. "Thank you for sharing this with me," she whispered, leaning into him. His arms went around her naturally, as if they'd been doing this forever. "There's more," he said into her hair. "The treatment Emily's receiving, it's working better than anything we've tried before. The research team thinks we might be close to a breakthrough that could help other families, prevent other children from going through this." Sarah pulled back to look at him, seeing the mix of hope and fear in his eyes. "That's amazing, James." "It is. But it also means more work, more public attention when we publish the results. I need you to know what you're getting into, being involved with us." "With me?" "I'm not going anywhere," Sarah said firmly. "Emily is getting stronger every day. You're changing lives with this research. And I." She paused, gathering her courage. "I'm falling in love with all of it. The music, the memories, the hope. You." James touched her cheek, wiping away tears she hadn't realized were falling. "I'm falling in love with you too," he whispered. "And it doesn't feel like betraying Claire anymore. It feels like keeping another kind of promise to live, to love, to fill our home with music again." As he kissed her in that room full of memories, Sarah felt the weight of the past and the promise of the future merge into something beautiful. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars, And somewhere in the hospital, Emily was probably telling Mr. Trunks about her plans for their homecoming tomorrow. "Take me to see the sunflowers?" Sarah asked when they finally parted. "I want to know every part of your story." James smiled, that real smile that reached his eyes and warmed her heart. "Our story," he corrected gently. "I think it's becoming our story now." The drive to the Matthews home took them through winding suburban streets lined with grand houses, each set back from the road behind manicured lawns. Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness as James turned onto a private drive, but all thoughts fled when she saw the sunflowers. They lined both sides of the long driveway, hundreds of them standing tall in the evening light, their faces turned toward the setting sun. The sight took her breath away. "Claire insisted on planting them herself," James said softly as he parked in front of a beautiful colonial-style home. "Even when she was sick, she'd come out here every evening. Said they were her backup dancers." Sarah stepped out of the car, drawn to the nearest sunflower. Its wide face was nearly as big as a dinner plate, petals a deep golden yellow. "They're magnificent." "The gardener thought I was crazy, wanting to maintain them exactly as they were," James admitted, coming to stand beside her. "But Emily was right, they're too important to let go." A warm breeze rustled through the flowers, carrying the sweet scent of summer. James took Sarah's hand and led her up the front path, past beds of smaller flowers that complemented the towering sunflowers. The house was large but welcoming, with warm lights glowing in the windows. Inside, Sarah immediately noticed the baby grand piano in the living room, its polished surface reflecting the evening light. "Emily's domain," James said with a smile. "Or it will be again, once she's stronger." He led her through the house, past family photos and children's artwork, until they reached a door at the end of a hallway. "The music room," he said, a hint of nervousness in his voice as he opened it. Sarah gasped. The room was beautiful, walls painted a soft cream color, floor-to-ceiling windows looking out over the sunflower garden, and instruments carefully arranged throughout the space. A guitar stand waited empty in one corner, while Claire's record player held pride of place on a vintage cabinet. "Emily's glitter sign will go there," James said, pointing to a blank wall. If you want to use this space. For lessons, or just to play. Whenever you want." Sarah turned to him, her heart full. "It's perfect. There's one more thing." James opened the cabinet beneath the record player and pulled out a worn album. Claire's favorite. She used to play it every Sunday morning. The soft crackle of vinyl filled the room as James carefully placed the needle. The opening notes of What a Wonderful World drifted through the air, Louis Armstrong's distinctive voice wrapping around them like a warm embrace. "Dance with me?" James held out his hand, and Sarah took it without hesitation. They swayed together in the fading sunlight, the music mixing with the rustle of sunflowers outside. Sarah rested her head on James's shoulder, breathing in the scent of his cologne mingled with the lingering hospital coffee. "Tomorrow's the big day," she murmured. "Is everything ready for Emily?" "As ready as it can be. The home care nurse will come every morning, and the physical therapist 3 times a week." He pulled back slightly to look at her. "But she's most excited about her music teacher." Sarah smiled. "Just music teacher?" "No," James said softly, touching her cheek. "Not just anything. You're becoming everything." The song changed to something slower, more romantic. Outside, the sunflowers stood sentinel in the gathering dusk, their faces still turned toward the last rays of sun. "Emily asked me something this morning," Sarah said, playing with the collar of James's shirt. "She wanted to know if she could call me Sarah Mom someday. Not to replace Claire, she was very clear about that. But as something new." James's breath caught. "What did you say?" "I told her that someday, if everyone was ready, I'd be honored." Sarah met his eyes, seeing them shine with tears. "Was that okay?" Instead of answering, he kissed her, a deep, sweet kiss that held promises of mornings filled with music, of sunflower-lined days, of a future where love didn't replace love but added to it, like harmony enriching a melody. When they finally parted, the record had stopped playing, leaving them in comfortable silence. Sarah looked around the room again, seeing not just what it was but what it could be. Emily at the piano, her hands strong again, James watching from the doorway with his crooked tie and coffee, herself adding new music to Claire's collection, helping create fresh memories while honoring the old ones. "I should get you home," James said reluctantly. "Early day tomorrow." Sarah nodded, but pulled him close for one more dance. In the quiet room, their heartbeats provided the only music they needed. Morning light streamed through the hospital windows as Sarah hurried down the now familiar corridor one last time. Her guitar was slung over her shoulder, and she carried a small gift bag decorated with astronaut elephants. The usual hospital sounds seemed muted today, as if the building itself was preparing to say goodbye to one of its favorite patients. Emily was already dressed when Sarah arrived, sitting on the edge of her bed in a new sundress dotted with tiny musical notes, a gift from the nurses. Mr. Trunk sat in her lap wearing his space helmet, now adorned with medical badges from every department that had cared for her. "Sarah." Emily's face lit up. "Look, I'm wearing real clothes. And shoes." She kicked her feet out, showing off glittery sneakers that matched her dress. "Very stylish," Sarah approved, setting down her guitar case. "And I see Mr. Trunks is dressed for the occasion too." James appeared in the doorway, pushing a wheelchair decorated with streamers and more glitter than Sarah thought possible. "The chariot awaits, princess," he announced with a flourish. "Though I think you used enough glitter to guide us home in the dark if needed." Emily giggled as he lifted her carefully into the chair. "That was the point, Daddy." Sarah said more glitter means more magic. "Did she now?" James raised an eyebrow at Sarah, who tried to look innocent despite the knowing smirk on Dr. Morrison's face as she entered for final checks. The discharge process seemed to take forever, with last-minute instructions and prescriptions and appointments to schedule. Emily fidgeted in her wheelchair, her excitement barely contained. Finally, Dr. Morrison knelt beside her. "Remember our deal?" she asked seriously. "Piano practice only when your hands feel strong enough, and always stop if they get tired." Emily nodded solemnly. "I promise." "Sarah will help me know when to stop, right Sarah?" "Absolutely," Sarah assured them both. "We'll take it slow and steady." The walk through the hospital was like a tiny parade. Nurses, doctors, and other patients came out to wave goodbye, many wiping tears as Emily passed. She had touched so many hearts during her stay, her resilience inspiring everyone around her. At the main entrance, Marie the volunteer coordinator waited with a small package. "A little something to remember us by," she said, hugging Emily carefully. Then she turned to Sarah with a knowing smile. "Though I suspect we'll still be seeing you around here." Sarah blushed as James squeezed her hand. They had already discussed her continuing to volunteer. Some things were too important to let go. The drive home was filled with Emily's excited chatter about everything she wanted to do: play piano, visit her sunflowers, show Sarah her room, have a proper tea party with Mr. Trunks. James kept glancing in the rearview mirror, his eyes shining with joy at his daughter's enthusiasm. When they turned onto the Sunflower Line Drive, Emily fell silent. Sarah watched as the little girl's eyes filled with tears at the sight of the familiar flowers standing tall in the morning sun. "They waited for me," she whispered. "Of course they did, sweetheart," James said softly. "Just like we all did." The front door was decorated with Emily's welcome home signs, and more glitter-covered creations lined the path. But what made Emily gasp was the new addition to the garden: a small piano-shaped bench nestled among the sunflowers, perfect for sitting and reading or just watching the flowers dance in the breeze. "That's for me," Sarah said as James helped Emily out of the car. "For when you want to be close to the flowers but need to rest." Emily hugged her tightly, and Sarah felt James's arm slip around them both. They stood there for a moment, a new kind of family finding its shape in the morning light. "Can we have breakfast in the music room?" Emily asked as they headed inside. "I want to show Sarah all of Mom's records." "I think that's a perfect idea," James agreed. "Though maybe we should let Sarah open her surprise first." Surprise? Sarah turned to him, confused. Emily was practically bouncing in her wheelchair. Show her, Daddy. Show her what we did. James led them to the music room, and Sarah stopped in the doorway, her hand flying to her mouth. Next to the empty guitar stand she'd noticed last night was a beautiful wooden sign, clearly hand-painted with Emily's careful letters despite her shaky hands. It read Sarah's Corner and was decorated with painted sunflowers and music notes. Every music teacher needs their own space, Emily explained proudly. And look, there's room for all your guitars. Sarah tried to speak but couldn't pass the lump in her throat. Instead, she knelt and hugged Emily again, then stood to kiss James softly. Welcome home, he whispered against her lips. All of us. The first few days at home settled into a gentle rhythm. Sarah took time off from the coffee shop to help with the transition, her mornings now filled with physical therapy sessions disguised as music lessons. Emily's determination shone through as she worked to strengthen her hands, starting with simple finger exercises that doubled as piano warm-ups. On this particular morning, sunshine poured through the music room windows as Emily sat at the piano, her face scrunched in concentration. Mr. Trunks watched from his new perch atop the record cabinet, still wearing his medical badges like medals of honor. Remember to breathe, Sarah reminded her softly, sitting beside her on the bench. Your hands know what to do. Trust them. Emily took a deep breath and placed her fingers on the keys. The opening notes of Twinkle, Twinkle Little Star filled the room slower than before her illness, but steady and clear. From the doorway, James watched silently, his coffee forgotten in his hand. As the last note faded, Emily sat very still, tears rolling down her cheeks. Sweetheart? Sarah started, worried they'd pushed too hard. I did it, Emily whispered. I really did it. She turned to Sarah with a smile that could have outshone the sun. Mom would be so happy. She is happy, James said, finally entering the room. He knelt beside the piano bench, taking Emily's small hands in his. So proud of you, baby girl. Just like we all are. Sarah stood to give them a moment, but Emily caught her hand. Stay. You're part of this too. You helped bring the music back. The three of them sat together at the piano as Emily played the song again, gaining confidence with each note. Outside, the sunflowers swayed in the morning breeze as if dancing to the melody. Later that afternoon, while Emily napped with Mr. Trunks, Sarah and James sat on the piano-shaped bench in the garden. The summer air was sweet with the scent of flowers, and somewhere nearby a bird was singing. The research team called this morning, James said, his thumb tracing circles on Sarah's hand. The results from Emily's treatment are even better than we hoped. We're ready to start trials for other families. Sarah squeezed his hand. Claire would be so proud of you too, you know. You kept your promises. I had help, he smiled, pulling her closer. Speaking of which, I have something to ask you. Sarah's heart skipped as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside wasn't a ring, instead, there was a key tied with a ribbon made from an old piece of sheet music. Move in with us, James said softly. Not just for lessons or weekend stays. Really be part of this. Part of us. Sarah stared at the key, her vision blurring with tears. Are you sure? It's only been a few months. I've never been more sure of anything, James said. Except maybe that Claire sent you to us. To help heal our hearts and bring back the music. From inside the house came the sound of Emily playing again, not Twinkle, Twinkle this time, but the beginning of Claire's favorite song, What a Wonderful World. The notes were careful and slow, but full of love. Yes, Sarah whispered, taking the key. Yes to all of it. To the music and the sunflowers and the glitter explosions. To early morning coffee and late night dances. To helping Emily grow strong again. To loving both of you. James kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. The sunflowers cast dappled shadows over them, and the music from the house wrapped around them like a blessing. Sarah, Mom. Emily's voice called from inside. Come see. I learned the next part. They broke apart laughing, and James helped Sarah to her feet. Better not keep her waiting. She's got her mother's patience, which is to say, none at all. Hand in hand, they walked back to the house, toward the music and the love and the beautiful mess of their blending lives. The key in Sarah's pocket felt like it weighed nothing at all, yet it held the weight of everything they were becoming together. If you're enjoying this video and want more content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. That way, you won't miss out on any of the amazing stories/videos we have coming up. Your support really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more of what you love. Thank you. The weeks flowed into months, and summer began to fade into autumn. The sunflowers stood tall and proud, their faces still turning to follow the sun's path across the sky. Sarah's coffee shop apron now hung beside James's ties in the mudroom, and her guitars had found their home in the music room, though they spent more time in use than on their stands. One crisp September morning, Sarah woke to the sound of muffled giggles and the smell of something burning. She found James and Emily in the kitchen, surrounded by flour and failed attempts at pancakes. "Don't laugh," James warned as she leaned against the doorframe. "We're practicing for a special occasion." Emily bounced on her toes, her hands much steadier now as she stirred more batter. "It's almost your birthday. Daddy says we have to learn to make breakfast because you always make it for us." Sarah's heart swelled as she watched them together, James with flour in his hair, Emily wearing her mother's old apron tied twice around her small frame. These moments, these simple Sunday mornings, had become more precious than any luxury their wealth could buy. "The research center called yesterday," James said later, after they'd given up on pancakes and ordered bagels instead. "They want to name the new treatment protocol after Claire. Emily's success has opened doors for so many other families." Emily looked up from where she was teaching Mr. Trunks to play chess on the living room floor. "Really? Mom's going to help other kids like me?" "She already is, sweetheart," Sarah said softly. "Through the strength she gave you, and the love that kept your dad going until they found the right treatment." The chess piece in Emily's hand trembled slightly, not from weakness now, but emotion. "Can we play her favorite record? The one about the wonderful world?" James was already moving to the record player, handling the vinyl with practiced care. As Louis Armstrong's voice filled the room, Emily stood and held out her hands. "Dance with me? Both of you?" They swayed together in the morning light, Emily between them, their shadows making patterns on the floor. Sarah caught James watching her with that look that still made her heart skip, the one that held all the love he'd known before and all the love he'd found again. "I have a surprise for both of you," Emily announced as the song ended. She ran to the piano, her movements strong and sure now. The physical therapy had done its work, helped along by hours of musical practice and a determination that reminded them all of Claire. Her fingers touched the keys, and Sarah gasped as she recognized the melody. It was the song she'd written about Claire, the one about sunflowers and dancing in kitchens. But Emily had added to it, weaving in new notes that spoke of healing and hope and family found in unexpected places. "I've been practicing when you're at the hospital," Emily explained, looking at Sarah. "For all the kids you helped there, like you helped me. And for Mom, because she helped us find you." James pulled Sarah close as they listened, his arms steady around her waist. She could feel his heart beating against her back, keeping time with the music their daughter played, their daughter, because that's what Emily had become, through love and choice and the gentle weaving together of broken pieces into something new and beautiful. When Emily finished playing, she turned on the piano bench with shining eyes. "Was it okay? Adding the new parts to Mom's song?" "It was perfect," Sarah assured her, voice thick with tears. "Because that's what we've done, isn't it? Added new love to the old, without losing any of it." "Like harmony," Emily said wisely, running her fingers over the keys. "Different notes that make something better together." Outside, the first leaves were starting to turn golden, matching the sunflowers that had become such a symbol of their family. Sarah thought about the ring James had hidden in his desk drawer. She'd found it accidentally while looking for sheet music last week, but had pretended not to see. Some surprises deserve their moment. Emily started playing again, this time a playful tune about astronaut elephants and the power of glitter. James twirled Sarah in the morning light, both of them laughing as Emily added silly lyrics about her father's inability to make pancakes. This was their symphony now: burnt breakfast attempts and morning dances, piano practices and tender memories, old love cherished and new love blooming like sunflowers turning toward the light. Different notes coming together to make something beautiful, something whole. The morning of Emily's first piano recital since her recovery dawned bright and clear. Sarah found her in the music room at sunrise, already dressed in her new purple recital dress, practicing one last time with Mr. Trunks conducting from his usual spot. "I thought I heard music," Sarah said softly, sitting beside her on the bench. "How are your hands feeling?" "Strong," Emily smiled, playing a quick scale to demonstrate. "Like Mom's watching over them." Sarah smoothed a stray curl back from Emily's face. "She is. And she'd be so proud of how far you've come." James appeared in the doorway, holding 3 cups of coffee, 2 large and 1 small hot chocolate that Emily insisted on calling her coffee now that she was almost 9. "Ready for the big day, princess?" The recital was being held at the Matthews Research Center, in a newly completed auditorium that would be dedicated to Claire after the performance. The space was filled with other families whose children were now receiving the treatment that had helped Emily, along with doctors, researchers, and supporters of the program. Emily sat backstage, Mr. Trunks in her lap, as James and Sarah greeted guests. Sarah caught snippets of conversation about miracle recoveries and promising research, but her focus kept drifting to the little girl who had changed everything when she'd asked for Twinkle, Twinkle Little Star in a hospital room that now felt like a lifetime ago. Finally, it was time. James stepped onto the stage to make the opening remarks, his voice steady despite the emotion Sarah could see in his eyes. "A year ago, my daughter Emily couldn't hold a pencil," he began. "Today, she's going to play piano for you. But this performance is about more than music. It's about hope and healing and the incredible power of love to transform loss into legacy." He spoke about Claire, about the research center's mission, about the dozens of children now receiving treatment. Then his eyes found Sarah in the wings, and his smile softened. "Sometimes the darkest moments in our lives lead us to the brightest futures. My late wife Claire always said that beautiful things will turn toward the light. She was right, as usual. Today, we're here to celebrate not just medical breakthroughs, but the symphony of life that continues to play even after we think the music has stopped." Emily walked onto the stage with perfect poise, her purple dress sparkling under the lights. She settled at the grand piano, took a deep breath, and began to play. The melody started with Twinkle, Twinkle Little Star, her signature piece, the one that had started everything. But then it transformed, flowing into the song about Claire and sunflowers, and finally into something entirely new. Her small fingers danced across the keys with confidence and joy, telling their family's story through music: the loss, the healing, the love, both old and new. Sarah felt James's hand find hers in the darkness of the wings. On stage, Emily's face was serene as she played, channeling both her mother's, Claire's passion for music and Sarah's gentle guidance in finding it again. When the final notes faded, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Emily stood and curtsied, then ran straight into their arms. They held her together, their little family circle complete. Later that evening, as the sun set behind the sunflowers, they danced in the music room to Claire's old records. Emily had changed into pajamas but refused to take off her purple dress over them. Mr. Trunks wore a tiny bow tie made from the same fabric. "Sarah?" Emily asked during a quiet moment. "Do you think we could plant some new sunflowers next spring? Not to replace Mom's, but beside them? So the garden grows bigger, like our family?" Sarah met James's eyes over their daughter's head, seeing in them the same joy and gratitude she felt. "I think that's a perfect idea, sweetheart. Everything beautiful deserves a chance to grow." On a warm spring morning 1 year later, Sarah stood in the doorway of the music room, taking in the scene before her. Her wedding ring caught the sunlight as she rested her hand on the doorframe, watching Emily teach another young girl how to position her hands on the piano keys. The girl, Katie, was one of many children now receiving Claire's treatment at the research center. Emily had insisted on starting a music program for the patients, remembering how music had helped her own healing journey. "Remember to breathe," Emily said softly, echoing the words Sarah had once spoken to her. "Your hands know what to do. Trust them." Katie's mother sat nearby, tears in her eyes as she watched her daughter's fingers move across the keys. Just 6 months ago, Katie couldn't hold a spoon. Now she was playing Twinkle, Twinkle Little Star, the same song that had started their family's journey. James appeared beside Sarah, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Like looking in a mirror, isn't it?" he whispered. Through the windows, they could see their garden. Claire's original sunflowers now stood tall alongside the new ones Sarah and Emily had planted. The old and new blooms turned their faces to the sun together, just as Claire had always said they would. Mr. Trunks watched from his place of honor on top of the piano, still wearing his medical badges and space helmet, now joined by a tiny wedding bow tie from Sarah and James's ceremony. He'd become something of a mascot at the research center, inspiring Emily to start a program where every new patient received their own stuffed elephant to accompany them on their journey. "You know what Mom used to say?" Emily was telling Katie as she helped her with a tricky note. "She said that music is like love, there's always room for more, and adding new songs doesn't make the old ones any less beautiful." Sarah felt James's arm tighten around her waist as they listened to their daughter's words. Emily had grown so much, not just in strength but in wisdom and compassion. She'd taken her own experience of healing and turned it into a way to help others, just as Claire's legacy had done through the research center. Later that evening, as they sat on the piano-shaped bench among the sunflowers, Emily between them, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought them here. What had started as a simple volunteer assignment had blossomed into something profound, a testament to the healing power of love, music, and the courage to open your heart to new beginnings. "Look," Emily pointed to where a small sunflower was growing between two larger ones. "It's like our family, Claire, Mom watching over both of us." James kissed the top of her head. "Your mom would be so proud of you, sweetheart. Of all of us." "I know," Emily smiled, leaning back against them. "Because love doesn't end, it just changes its song. Like when we add harmony to an old melody." Sarah looked at her family, this beautiful blend of past and present, of love lost and love found, of music that never truly stopped but simply waited for new voices to join the chorus. She thought of all the families now finding hope through Claire's legacy, of the children learning to play music again, of the sunflowers that kept turning toward the light year after year. And therein lay the true moral of their story: life's greatest symphony is composed of both joy and sorrow, of endings that become beginnings, of love that grows rather than diminishes when shared. Just as a garden has room for new flowers beside the old, our hearts have an infinite capacity to love, to heal, and to grow stronger through life's challenges. The music room was quiet now except for the evening breeze rustling through the sunflowers. But in that silence was the promise of tomorrow's songs: Emily's piano lessons with Katie, James's off-key morning singing, Sarah's guitar playing mixing with Claire's old records, and the constant reminder that love, like music, knows no boundaries. Because in the end, it's not about replacing what was lost, but about finding the courage to let your heart grow bigger, to add new notes to life's melody while cherishing the original song. For in this beautiful symphony called life, there's always room for one more verse, one more flower, one more love story to bloom beside the others, turning toward the light together.